Bringing you the top stories from Bonners Ferry to St. Mary's and everywhere in between, this is the North Idaho Prepcast with Ryan Scaggs.
That's right. Welcome in another edition of the North Idaho Prepcast, coming at you, your weekly breakdown of everything Districts 1 and 2 up north. Brandon Baney with Ryan Scaggs. Ryan, how are you?
I'm doing well. How about yourself?
Yeah, I'm doing great. So where I live in East Idaho, we got like 4 inches of snow this week, and the schedule's been completely wiped out. How have things been with Mother Nature up north?
Down in the Moscow south has been pretty much a whiteout. So, those have all been pretty much scratched across Camas Prairie too. Actually up north, we have been relatively unscathed by snow so far. So we've ended up unscathed. There's not much to speak of. I mean, other than up in the hills, but we've still been playing baseball and having track meets. It's cold, but it's not snowing, so that's a benefit.
Definitely. And we'll have all sorts of results to get to because last week everybody was coming off of spring break. There wasn't too much to discuss, but we've got a full loaded schedule. But we wanted to touch on the topic we broached last week because it was our kind of spring break podcast where there wasn't much going on. We decided, well, let's talk about, making some potential fixes to how things are bracketed, how state tournaments are determined, how classifications are going to work.
Oh boy.
And again, this is just two guys talking. It's not anything that's officially happening and probably never will because nobody really cares about our opinion, but it's fun stuff to talk about. And basically, we kind of came to the conclusion that, get rid of a classification, go from 6 to 5, take charge of trying to make the conferences as even as possible. So this representation stuff doesn't really matter too much anymore at state. And we got some positive feedback, I think, on the subject. So
we did. Yeah, there was actually, and it was statewide too. It wasn't just kind of local listenership. It ended up getting shared down south by some notable individuals, including a coach in the SIC shared the podcast too and had some interesting insight to it. He was a basketball coach. So it was interesting because I'm looking at I finally, when I got done with the episode, I went down and actually broke down the hard numbers. And I did post it on my personal Twitter page just to see kind of like I was a dog with a bone with this one. I was like, I talk about it, I better be able to show something. And it was actually pretty surprising what I found out with the classification disparity. And even with the new school being added in West Ada when Hawaii was open, and it kind of shaved off some of the upper limits as far as enrollment, like Rocky Mountain and Mountain View and Meridian. And so it created a little bit more of a level playing field. You still have the outlier of Timberline and Boise is just a huge school. I don't know how long that's going to be sustainable until they add another school out there, but I don't know how expansion can take place any more than it is out there off the bench and everything too. So it's an interesting concept, but if you take out the outlier, and going to a 5 classification system instead of a 6, I ran the numbers and it comes back that everybody's classification, the disparity is actually shrinking, which sounds pretty ridiculous, but all those top end, we just talked about taking the ceiling off of 4A and putting them up at 5A. And then now, the Statesman writes an article and it was kind of like, hold my beer. We're talking about this. And there's the article that comes out about how they're wanting to do individual sports classifications and reclassifications, and you can opt down or whatever. And, it ended up throwing a wrench in what I talked about, because you'd have the likes of outside of Bishop Kelly, who I would kind of give what we call up here the Gonzaga prep treatment. Of them being a private school in the Treasure Valley, being able to have a little bit wider reach because they don't have to adhere to as strict of, district guidelines on where kids live to attend the school. I honestly think that they should be an opt up to 5A. I really do. And, in Washington, they did that with Gonzaga Prep, and it made a difference. That Gonzaga Prep still winning state championships. They're not, they're still competitive in every sport. And I see Bishop Kelly, their non-league schedules against 5A SIC teams, and they're beating them half the time anyways. So, it was interesting to have that conversation, especially with some of the Eastern Idaho folks, because it created some great conference. If you look at the conferences, everybody's like, heck yeah, I'm on board with this. Let's do this. Let's go now. And, there's a couple individuals. It's like, hey, we're gonna push this towards our athletic director and see if we can get some traction. But yeah, we'll see how it goes. But the reception to it was actually relatively welcoming, because I think the rest of the state, outside of the state of Boise, sees the disparity. They see like that, state can rotate sites. Like they can put classifications like Montana does. You shared an article with me yesterday that, we should be able to rotate sites for individual classifications. We don't need everybody in one location all the time.
Yeah. And I love the feedback that we got. And now everybody, because the IHSAA held their annual meeting last week as we were recording, actually, Ryan. Yeah. And they came up with this new policy. It approved, or it passed on first reading. It still has to pass on second reading at the next meeting. But everyone's like, oh boy, classification changes are what you guys were talking about. Is that legitimately happening? No, it's like the complete opposite. So like I said, what we're talking about probably will never happen, because the IHSAA board voted, I think it was 10-2, but they voted to allow schools to petition down a classification at an individual sports level, which just makes no sense to me whatsoever. I'll be honest. I usually don't have like really big, strong take opinions, but I think this is a horrendous idea. And I think it's going to create a very large headache.
This is transfer portal type stuff we're talking about.
I mean, because you're talking about, for example, I'm trying to think of a good example up north.
I'd say Moscow going down to 3A in football or in some other sports.
Yeah. So you have, like, let's say, for example, you've got Sandpoint, which is really good in football and baseball and track and field, but they've been struggling the last couple of years in boys basketball and girls. They've been pretty good in girls basketball, but they've been struggling in boys basketball and like wrestling. Okay. So Sandpoint is going to compete in 4A like they normally do, except for boys basketball and wrestling. And they're going to petition down to be in the 3A IML. So you're talking about, instead of a uniform, like making a conference schedule is already difficult.
I'm going to create the Charlie Day gif here, where it's just like giving you the headache thing. Like, oh, the headaches about that is just it. I look at that and it's like utter, almost insanity. It really is.
What athletic director would want to? Okay,
go to a 2-team conference. Go ahead.
I've got 5 teams in football. I've got 7 in basketball. I've got 10 in baseball. Like, it makes no sense to have schools individually. But I understand. No. I understand that, generally speaking, I think the schools that have strong athletic programs, so they're pretty strong or competitive across the board. There's some outliers in the Boise area, schools like Caldwell and Columbia that really struggle in every sport except for soccer and wrestling. But you know what? I'm tired of this.
Dude, you have 1,500 other kids in the school. Like, do a better job of getting your kids to turn out.
Yes, I already hate this petition down process. Where I'm from in Montana, if you're over the enrollment, sorry. You're playing at that classification. There's no petitioning. Get better. Get better. That's, participation trophy, yada, yada, yada. You know what? It's up to the coaches to drum up that excitement. And you can turn a program that's down and turn it around and turn it into a winner. It happens all the time.
I mean, I'm looking at enrollment numbers, right? That Caldwell is already 4A. They've got 1,425 students at Caldwell High School. They're going to petition down to 3A in football, and they're going to play, say, a league game against McCall Donnelly with 361 students.
Yeah.
Are you kidding me? That's an 1,100 student difference. And McCall's like, hey, I bet I would put money on McCall to win that game, honestly. But like, it's like it becomes a safety issue because of exposure, right? I mean, like, if we're looking at how many kids we get to turn out, or how many kids we have access to your best kids of you who have access to, it makes no sense. I mean, Caldwell's going to play a league game against Parma with 311 kids. Like, I mean, come on. It makes no sense. Safety wise, it doesn't compute. I mean, that's like saying that Sandpoint in basketball, let's use that example because we talked about up north. Say they petition to go down to 3A and play in the IML. Okay, so now Sandpoint's got They're right on the cusp. They have 966 students, right on the cusp of 1,000 kids. To our league game, granted, Priest River is going down to 2A next year in football, but they're still going to remain 3A in basketball. They've got 274 kids. You're telling me there's a similarity between Sandpoint High School and Priest River? Like, no, this doesn't make any sense at all. I mean, I could be on a soapbox here, but it makes absolutely no sense.
And again, probably 90% of these appeals will be denied. But why even open yourself to it?
Yeah.
Why make it? Yeah,
it's like I mean, like I said, I'd akin it to the transfer portal, that it allows, like, oh, we're not successful here, so let's go ahead and try to move somewhere else to see if we can drum up success. Like, why can't we just get better? Like, what's wrong with that?
Yeah. You know what? We're not winning here. Let's go down a level and it's a lose-lose, because if you're a bigger school and you jump down a classification level and you continue to lose, then that's going to set your program back even further. But if you move down a level and you beat up on congrats, macho man. You beat up on schools that were way smaller than you. Like, it's a lose-lose for everybody.
The only place I could see it working is at like the lower end of 2A and the 1As. Like, that's really where it would make sense, because of trying to leave, like, where Lakeside's going to go from 1A D1 to 1A D2 in football, because, well, travel and like creating a conference that's going to be competitive for them. And I see that maybe working out, but like, throwing a dart at the wall, say like North Fremont, 180 kids, we're going to play 8-man football now. I mean, you could make that argument probably that they're going to play 1A D1, but then they're going to have like the likes of like Oakley and Grace and other teams down there to worry about. So, I mean, yeah, I don't know. It's going to cause havoc for district issues too, like for district tournaments.
And I don't see any teams up north taking the bait here. And the teams up north are pretty straightforward, and we'll play where we're supposed to play. It's going to be
if we see a petition, it's going to be from the likes of like Priest River. They're going to petition all sports to go down to 2A, but that would be basically or the only place I really see it. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, everybody else is kind of on the straight and narrow. It's going to be a lot of Boise stuff. It's going to be a lot of Boise 5A, 4A shenanigans is basically what it's going to.
Can you petition up?
You could probably, but why? I mean, why would you?
I mean, if you're a St. Mary's,
you want to play 3A,
you could. It's a possibility.
You could. That I don't know. I guess I didn't look at it from the other way. Schools very rarely petition up. I feel like they're fighting to stay where they are.
They're just trying to play it down to see if they can keep the competitive balance or whatever. And it's like, I mean, some cases playing up might benefit you getting a state.
Right. Right. Okay. Well, we'll table the talk for a later date. Maybe when it officially passes, we can, little off-season podcast.
Yeah. Late May.
Yeah. Let's start with track and field.
Sure.
What stood out to you from the past week?
Dalton Wild is still fast. He ended up increasing his PR to 11.01 in the 100 meters. And that was in a meet at Timberlake last week on Friday that was kind of in rain snow mix. Runs at 11.01 for the number 3 overall time at 5A. That's pretty awesome. Dylan Wolf ran 22.52 in the 200. He's got the 5th best time in the state at 5A. So that's kind of standing out there. You're looking at Lake City improve their 4x2 time for the boys. Post Fall still sitting at number 3. Coeur d'Alene's 4x800 teams at number 4 time in the state. Kind of going through who else we got. Rusty Lee improved his PR. He's at 39.73 in the 300 hurdles. Trying to look through here. I mean, Coeur d'Alene Charter had a kid, Logan Davis, has the number 1 time in the 800 at 2:04.19. So there's some numbers are improving for local teams and sometimes at least on the boys side. And then on the girls side, Katura Vogel Greenwood from Lake City has got the number 1 time in the state in the 100 at 12.48. We were talking about the couple gals from Coeur d'Alene High School, and now here comes Katura, who is absolutely blowing the doors off folks at 12.48 in the 100. And then Hannah Marco from Moscow has the number 2 time in the 300 hurdles and the number 3 time in the 100 hurdles. Lakeland went to a big meet in Oregon and ran a 52.19 in the 4x1. So they got the number 3 time at 4A. Kind of going through PRs, and Ruby Kessinger from Orfino has the number 3 shot, and then the number 1 long jump at 2A at 16:10 and a quarter. So yeah, some decent distances and times coming up from North Idaho. And like we talked about, temperatures increasing, but they're actually decreasing, and we're getting faster times still. So we'll see what happens if we get like a nice warm snap instead of 41 and partly cloudy.
Well, and you have to think that, state track is always in the Boise area.
Yep.
And that's going to be fantastic weather. So for these runners up north, and athletes, you could see their season best times and distances coming at state potentially.
Yep. Yeah, potentially. The hard part's going to be getting there. I mean, you got it, getting out of your district and getting those distances and times. I mean, it's kind of interesting. Some of the people that have set PRs or still hold the number 1 times or in the state, that came out of the first track meet of the year. And they haven't come anywhere close to that time since. So that says a little bit about weather influence, because a lot of those times were set down in Lewiston on a day that was like 60 degrees. And, we're still, hovering just over freezing right now up here in north some places. So, if we can get some warm weather in the next couple of weeks, I think we'll see some improvement. I really do see Dalton Wild. He's gonna break 11 seconds. He's right there on the cusp, and we'll see how low he can go. With 11:01 is fast, and that's in a kind of a weird weather situation with some sleet going on. So yeah, it'll be pretty good for the North kids, I think, to get out of the area.
Yeah, how low can you go? That's the name of the game.
Right.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll keep an eye on what's going on there with track. Let's shift over to baseball now. The new coaches polls came out yesterday. What stood out?
Yeah, Lewiston ended up in the top 5. It was obviously, I don't think that's much of a surprise. I think the bigger surprise was Post Falls splitting with them last week. But Post Falls ended up getting beat by Coeur d'Alene on Tuesday, 7-6, which was the Vikings are keeping things interesting in the IEL. That's any man's race right now. Post Falls being led by CD Sharples is, we know how good he is, but Lewiston's batting order is so stinking good. So it'll be interesting to see how, I think, the next couple of weeks wrap up for the IEL as we approach the end of April. But 5A is looking competitive, super competitive.
Yeah, you go from Post Falls splitting with Lewiston, and then they get swept by Coeur d'Alene in 2 games on Tuesday night. It's just a head scratcher for sure.
That one was kind of confusing, and Coeur d'Alene puts the beat down, obviously, on Lakeland. And then Lake City swept Sandpoint. But then you look at like 2A, Orfino's, 10-3-1 right now, number 2 in the state. They're lurking. They've got, a great bullpen. Their pitching staff's pretty solid. They got a couple good arms out there. But they can hit the ball really well. They're able to put up runs, and they play small ball really well. You're looking at 3A, Bonners Ferry's receiving votes. But I mean, look at Timberlake. They're lurking out there at 5-2 right now. With a couple of rainouts that they've had. So the Tigers and the Badgers, I think, are the favorites in 3A right now, but I wouldn't count either one of them out to make a push. I don't know about hardware at state, but at least making things competitive. And then 1A, it's like, name names. You've got 4 teams in the top 5. It's Genesee, Troy, Kendrick, and Prairie. But then you got receiving votes as Camia, Clearwater Valley, and Potlatch. So out of there, it's like, I think Genesee's pretty much a lock. I think you're going to see them in the state tournament. But then it's kind of draw a name out of a hat after that. I really do see that league being extremely competitive. Kendrick's playing good ball right now too.
Yeah, coming into the season, I kind of thought, well, Genesee, Prairie, and Camii were the 3 teams that got to state last year. And I was like, oh, they're all going to be good. Yeah. So I kind of said by default, those are the 3 that I would watch. But I'll tell you what, Clearwater Valley with Coach Josh Bradley has really impressed me.
Troy's out there right now at number 3. Troy's been playing great ball too.
Yeah, it's wide open. And the interesting and fun part is that no team has played a ton of games yet, right? Mother Nature's really wreaked havoc on the schedule. It's going to be really heavy on the back end. So.
Yeah. I'm going to see, I think you're going to see a lot of games being moved to Lewiston to be made up too if you're going to keep getting snow. You'll see it either Lewiston or Orfino getting a lot of games up because it's just kind of the way it works being a lower elevation. But yeah, it'll be the next couple weeks can be a busy schedule for those schools because there's been a lot of snow outs this last week. I know Moscow and Lakeland got snowed out early this week too. So
yeah, a lot of those White Pine League games take place in Lewiston anyways, because it's kind of a meet in the middle, because the White Pine League is so big geographically that a lot of times they say, hey, let's just meet up in Lewiston and do a double.
Well, Lewiston's got like 3 or 4 solid fields too, so it's not like they have a shortage of places to play. So
yeah, for sure. Baseball, I think realistically from the north, you could see, I think the champion for 1A will come from the north. Every other classification is going to be tough, I think.
Lewiston's the outlier. If they can make the state tournament and keep the run going, they're a dangerous team just because of what they can do offensively. So I wouldn't count out the Bengals. They're a solid team, but you got Coeur d'Alene and Post Falls both have solid players on each roster, but you look at their studs, and you can't, one guy in baseball is not going to be able to carry the entire team necessarily. And so, you're going to have your supporting cast step up, I think, a little bit to get some more action out of either of those teams as they approach state. But Lewiston, I think, is the one remaining team that I look at that can make some serious noise between Orfino and Genesee.
Yeah. I think on the softball side of things, there are a lot more opportunities for teams up north to go down to state and compete really well. What stood out to you in softball?
You had St. Mary's defeating Timberlake. They blanked them 3-0, which was, 2A stepping up against a ranked 3A team and getting a victory there. St. Mary's is good. I've got them dark horse. They're tied for third. They could win the state championship. Like, let's just be real. That lineup is solid, and they're pitching. I mean, Tacey's a stud, and so you look at that lineup, and they're right there at the 2A. I think they'd compete at 4A, to be honest with you. So I'm not going to hold anything back on them. Coeur d'Alene swept Lakeland. Kind of expected that one. I saw a split out of Moscow and Lake City. That was kind of an interesting one that stood out. Moscow's been kind of a hot and cold team. That league's wide open at 4A. I don't know if any of them are going to place come state time, but they're, at least it's kind of anybody's guess who's going to. You have Sandpoint, who doesn't have a win, but they could sneak in and still get a couple victories down the stretch and find their way into state. Lewiston looks really solid. They're ranked number 5 at 5A. Only one league loss so far. They did split last week, I believe, with Coeur d'Alene, or 2 weeks ago. So that's Coeur d'Alene's right there. They're competitive and receiving votes, so the Vikings aren't too far out of it. Timberlake's ranked 3. Nobody at 2A, so it's kind of whoever wants to kind of show up. Or at 3A, sorry, is between Timberlake and anybody else that wants to show up and compete. 1A, you've got Potlatch at number 3 with only 2 games under their belt. So it's kind of an interesting. I don't know how much you hold in rankings right now at 1A with all of the weather, but Clearwater Valley's sitting there undefeated. Then you got Genesee and Kendrick receiving votes as well. So St. Mary's did sweep Orfino too, which was kind of made a statement because Orfino was playing hot lately as well. But yeah.
Yeah, I look at the state picture, and really I think 4A is the only classification where the North is probably out. Bishop Kelly is so dominant in 4A. Yeah. But every other one, it's there.
Anybody's game. Yeah, the ladies, Lewiston, we know Lewiston can play, and there's a bunch of solid players on that team that have, been playing club ball since they were, 3rd, 4th grade and been competitive. So they've been able to win some regional tournaments and stuff. So there's some talent on that lineup. Coeur d'Alene's the same way. Timberlake, I really see as a dark horse. They played a pretty tough schedule. And St. Mary's, I don't, losing to St. Mary's 3-0, I don't take much from that loss. If you're keeping it close and limiting their bats, that's a pretty good score to hold up against a really solid Lumberjack team.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun to keep an eye on all of the baseball and softball action as we head down the stretch. I think that's probably a good stopping point for this week. There was a lot going on, and it's nice to have competition back up and running again.
Yeah. Sure. There's even some tennis matches that got in this week. So
yeah,
sure. Not many of those were happening across the state. So.
And the golf up north is always really solid. I know Coeur d'Alene's got some great golfers. Moscow always seems to have good. Kellogg is really. Bonners Ferry has a girl that's only a sophomore, and she is a favorite, I think, for the 3A state title. So lots of good golf up north too.
A lot of good golf going on around here, and there's You can even, and there's always places to go play. I mean, you can always head to Lewis. Like you talked about a couple weeks ago, when in doubt, head to Lewiston. But yeah,
That's right.
there's always some good opportunities up here, and there'll be some good competition coming down the stretch.
Yeah, even St. Mary's, Brian Chase coaches the St. Mary's boys basketball team. He's the golf coach too. And he's got a couple of those, Colby Renner and Grayson Sands. And, he's got some
that doesn't surprise me.
You're right.
Yeah, that was always the gig when I was coaching in high school in spring sports. I look at the golf coach and I'm like, what do you, I mean, and this isn't a knock to golf coaches out there, but I'm like, if you got a kid that can play, you're not the one that's coaching him up most of the time. Usually it's his time at the range and the pro down at the club that's been helping a lot. So it's kind of like, okay, go get your suntan, hang out on the course on a Monday, Tuesday morning. I really feel miserable for those guys.
A lot of the golf coaches do seem to coach, another sport in another season. And you're right. Once you tee off, the coach can't coach him. Like you can't walk the course with your golfer and coach him. Once they tee off, it's up to the player. So
yeah. So I'm like, what are they doing? Sitting on the range, playing target practice with each other, having like side bets or something. I don't know. But I'd always give grief to Coach Anderson at Lakeland about that, because he's a great guy and fun, but like he's like, coaching golf, what do you do when they play? Like nothing.
We're gonna end up offending some people. We are
probably, yeah.
We are joking.
I'm not far off. Okay, let's be honest.
Any coaching job is difficult, and we know that and acknowledge that. And we can have a little fun too. So
yeah, I know that because I did it for 15 years. But yeah, there's an extent to where you can kind of rib each other a little bit, I think too. So I say it in good fun.
Yes, all in good fun. So all right, well, Ryan, let me wish you a happy Easter early.
Thank you. You as well.
Yeah. You got plans? I know you got a little one. Is the Easter bunny going to come by?
A couple huge Easter egg hunts on Saturday, so we'll probably hit those up over in Post Falls, and yeah, it'll be fun. So
cool.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah, that'll be awesome. So, all right, well, happy Easter. Thanks for the rundown on everything going on up in North Idaho as well. And for Ryan Scaggs, I'm Brandon Baney, and we'll see you next week on another edition of the North Idaho Prepcast on IdahoSports.com.